Hello people, today is breakdown day and I decided to do a different type of breakdown. Normally I do lighting on one part and then I do editing on other, but today I decided to do both. And the image I'm going to use today is the one that I called Angels on Earth. Before I start, I wanted to give a big shout out to Benjamin, who is the model that I was working with us that day. I met him a couple of weeks ago. He's a contemporary dancer and he was more than willing to help out with all this jumping in positions and all that stuff. So thank you, man, for supporting. So for starters, lighting. As you can see, this is a strip bank. This is, if I'm not mistaken, is something around 2x6. I really don't remember the size, but it's one of the biggest from Pole Buff. It has a grid. So this, you can see the spread of light, right? If I didn't have this, this will probably be something more like this side. It will be hitting more of the background and all that stuff, and then I had to feather it even more, so it will be harder for me to control how much light is going to hit on him. He is jumping. Actually, the light that it's hitting him right now that you can see here is the edge of the light. So he is actually being hit by the feather, and the rest of this light is wrapping around. Now there's a bunch of light that is hitting on the floor and it's bouncing back up. That's where you can see it here, here, and some other parts. Now the image is a little bit underexposed, and like I normally say, that has a reason, and the reason is that I try or tend to keep as much texture as I can. You can see he's oily, he's greasy, so any highlight, any catch light, any reflection of the light on the skin is gonna take out texture out of it. So I try to minimize that hit by underexposing it for at least 1 or 2 stops. So this was a stop, if I'm not mistaken, of light. Of course, I wanted the whole dramatic, dark environment, so that will give me some more intention. But the main goal was to try to preserve as much texture as I could. So that's lighting wise. It's only one strobe, it's only one light, it's being feathered. The rest of the light is wrapping around, obviously it's bouncing back in. So that is how I created this effect. He was not too far from the background, but just a little bit, so just a little bit of this light could hit on the background, so it could help to separate him. It wasn't completely darkness, so that's another thing that I was keeping in mind. Now, editing wise, like I've been doing lately, what I do is I do a round trip through Photoshop. So my first edit is here on Capture One. So what I did is, and this is how it ended up. It actually was a couple of things. It wasn't too much. So I boosted up the whites so I can have a little more dynamic range. I opened it up the shadows and turned down the highlights just in case. So you can see over here, obviously these highlights are going to lose texture. But overall, I could still see the information of him. I cropped the image, as you can see. I'm constantly trying to use my Fibonacci spiral to try to figure things out and how to set it. And the other reason why I cropped it in so tight was because, one, I wanted to get rid of this, and I didn't want huge space, so I didn't lose all the intention from him. So yeah, boosted up the whites, picked up the shadows, picked up the highlights, and cropped it in so I could later on send this to Photoshop. So let's go to Photoshop to see what arrangements I did for this image. Now inside Photoshop, you can see there's just 3 different, well, not 3 different layers. Well, yeah, we got the 2 dodging and burning, and I've got my frequency separation layer, but this is mixed with a couple of more things. So if I turn this one on, you'll see a few things that I did. One, change his physique a little bit. I did try to trim up his waist, try to give him a little bit more of shape when he was jumping. I elongated the shoe a little bit because it felt it was a little bit short. Now I did try to clean as much as I could from the background, because it was super dirty on the floor. You can see there's a bunch of, you can see there's a bunch of dirt and all that stuff. So I try to clean it up as much as I could with frequency separation. Obviously on him, I took away a couple of things that I didn't like little blemishes, little stuff. Not too much though. It was something simpler. And then on dodge and burn is where a lot more of the magic came up. So I did increase the contrast, highlight more of the highlights, darken a little bit more of some shadows. I'm going to show you the mask. This is the burn mask, so this is where I add shadows to the body. I try to make this shadow deeper over here and on the side of the image, so you can see how that works. And then on the highlights or the dodge area, I try to intensify this hit here. Remember I had over here, I had the strip band showing up. So I wanted to highlight this a little bit more and give a little bit more of dimension to his body with the highlights. Try to boost up a little bit of the information that came out on this side. And that was it. That was actually it. That's all I did on Photoshop. Then I just saved and did final touches on Capture One. So this is the PSD on Capture One, and if you can see over here, there's a couple of things that I try to recuperate a little bit more of those highlights and boost it up a little bit more of those shadows. I think I did add some fine film grain, some silver rich, so it gave me a different feel on the image. Now I've got two more layers over here. On the first one, I have a radial gradient. You can see that, right? So on this gradient, what I added was try to get a little bit more of the drama that I used to have with the original image, which is this one. I didn't want it too dark, but I really wanted it to keep up that highlight over here on him and try to get this to go into dark. You can see I turned down the brightness and turned down the exposure a little bit. On the final layer, I have a Luma range mask, which I'm going to show you in a minute. You can see that the highlights are not being affected. That's a grayscale mask of it, right? So here I did a couple of things. First, if I'm not mistaken, I did crank up the blacks on the curve. So I changed the density of it. And the second thing that I did was to play with color balance. So you can see I added a little bit more of warmth on the midtones and blues on the shadows. So that gave me that effect on the image. And that was it. This is the breakdown for lighting and editing for Angels on Earth. Thank you for watching, people. Hope you enjoyed. And if you have any questions, just leave a comment below. See you next time.